I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Sounds like another Sunday night to me.
January 30th.
December 30th.
January 30th. I want December over.
You're trying to get there already? All right. Well, it is another Pint of Comics for you here. The last Pint of Comics of the year. John, do you know what number we're on? I know at one point you knew when we hit 75.
I forget.
You forget. All right. That's all right.
80, maybe.
We got a great one.
Didn't I tell you? You don't remember? No.
He doesn't remember. Let's get them on over on the other side there. All right, I can hear them already.
We have guests in studio.
We have guests in studio, and we have a 3-man team. We've got someone filming. This is the Royal Rumble, if you're a wrestling fan, of Pint of Comics. So you got Sir John, you got Johnny Ganache, and we got the Manster sitting here. The Manster can't hear anything right at the moment, but most importantly, it doesn't matter what we are. We've got Michael and Deb Kelleher on the other side. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Oh, good. How you doing?
Good.
Awesome.
Deb? Awesome?
Good, yeah.
Excellent. All right. Good to see you guys. If you remember, if you go back, God, when were you here last? Like over a year ago.
It was last winter. Yeah.
Last winter.
Yep.
All right. So Mike is the head dude at Kellestration.
What do we call him again?
We call him. I came up with a new one. I've adjusted. I've adjusted it a little bit. We called him the Indiana Jones of comic books, but I think it just sounds better. The Indiana Jones of the 4-color.
Sure.
You like that better, or you like comic books better? We can stick whatever you like.
I like 4-color.
4-color. All
Sure.
right. All right. So
It sounds older.
it does. It's not well.
And it steps a little bit on my printing roots. So
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. So Mike was here last year. We'll give you the quick recap. 2 years ago at Terrificon, the wonderful show held at the Mohegan Sun in Uncasville, Connecticut. John and I arrived there on day one, and I lost John for 7 hours. And we were supposed to do interviews, supposed to do all this good stuff, and I couldn't find John. And the reason I couldn't find John is because John had fallen head over heels in love with Mike, and they had a 7-hour discussion at the booth. And I came over, talked to Mike really quickly, and then toured John away. And the rest of the day, all I had to hear about was, boy, that Mike Kelleher guy, oh, he sure is swell.
and I was saying, I got to check on him tomorrow because he was already losing his voice on the first day.
I was, yes.
Getting beaten up. So then we go forward a little bit, and I think we kind of met Mike again at the Great BingCon. And I came up with another great name besides Indiana Jones of the 4-color. I'm going to start calling like that whole, like the group of you guys, like you and Mark Mostal and G. Michael Dow. You're the Springfield Art Mafia.
Sure. Yeah, I'll take it.
So
Yeah, no, I like that.
you like that? So the Springfield Art Mafia.
That'll go over well.
The Cosa Nostra of AgaWHAM. We're hanging out at BingCon. We met Mike again. And Mike was a guest on our BingCon show with you. You interviewed him.
I did.
And then we got him on this show. And then we saw him again at Terrificon this year.
Yep.
He had a booth. And Deb, actually, you do all kinds of crafts and stuff. You make bookmarks, right?
Yes.
Yes, which I know because I bought one from you, and it's currently sitting in the book I'm reading. It's a
love to
really
hear
awesome Green Lantern one. I bought it from you at BingCon this year.
I'm glad to hear you're using it.
Yes, yes. I actually told Deb a very funny story about how my wife tends to dog ear pages. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
And look at her face. She actually got kind of sick. She got kind of sick when I said, well, I bought my wife bookmarks before. Like you go to Barnes & Noble and they have those spinner racks with the bookmark with the light on it and then, all this stuff. And I give it to her for Christmas. And then usually by like March, I find it on the ground somewhere. And then I notice
dog chew toy.
Yeah. My dog is eating it or past it.
Well, Deb looks at books, novels and paperback books the way that we look at comic books. It's like you take care of them. You don't you wouldn't fold over the pages of your new issue or an old issue of Spider-Man. She doesn't. She likes to take care of her books.
Oh, so like a novel for you, you keep it forever.
I keep it, or I'll give it to somebody who's starting to get into it because I have to make room for more.
Okay, all right. What kind of books are you into?
Mainly science fiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the Anne McCaffrey and that kind of thing.
I'll nod my head. I don't know who that is, but I'm going to go, oh, awesome.
I know who it is. Sorry, John.
And to round it off, and I want to say a resounding thank you to you guys yet again. you invited us so awesomely to your Christmas party this year, held up in AgaWHAM, which I mentioned a second ago.
AgaWHAM.
AgaWHAM.
I like the wham at the end.
The old, well, that's when George Michael's in town. It's AgaWHAM with an exclamation point at the end of it. But you invited us up. John, myself, the Manster, and my wives came up, and we had a great time.
Good.
And it was such a nice night, and it was really cool.
It was all because it was the crowd. I mean, it's the easy. I don't remember who said it. The easy way to throw a good party is to just invite good people.
Yeah.
And that's all. It was just we had about 60 or 70 people showed up, and
That's a good crowd.
every one of them
Oh,
were just great people.
Great
so.
food. It was a great time, and I like the fact. I initially thought, they got it like only going to like 10 o'clock, but you packed in a lot in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I'm old. I got to get to bed. That's the only reason
I don't disagree with you. We had to drive. We drove an hour and 20 minutes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm like, that's perfect. We'll be home by 11:20, and that's 2 hours past my bedtime anyway.
And we talked his wife into doing an article for our website.
That's right. On the ride back, I bought every couple years I'll buy my wife a comic.
Yeah.
And something I think will tickle her fancy. And like about 5 years ago, I remember I came home from work, and usually I'll buy her the comic, and it will just end up like sitting somewhere never to be read.
Yep.
And about 5 years ago, I came home from work, and we have like kind of like a back living room, a sun porch, and she was outside and sitting on a chair out in the yard reading a comic, and I took a picture of her with my phone to document it. And then I said, okay, this is it. So I bought her another comic, and never been read. So recently, she's much like in my age range, a couple years younger. For me, the 80s was my thing. So G.I. Joe, Transformers, He-Man, Thundercats. For her, it was all that same stuff, but the opposite. Care Bears, My Little Pony, all the Strawberry Shortcake. They came out with a Dynamite.
Apple pie, man.
Dynamite, I think it was, came out with My Little Pony. No, what was it? Rainbow Bright comic book. And I bought her the first issue. And John did the impossible on the ride home. He talked her into writing a review for PineyComics.com, and she did, and it was really good. I mean, I
got a good number of hits in the first
Fantastic.
2 days it was up. And
had never really read my wife's, I don't know if you'd call it review creative writing, but her writing at all, and at least to that extent, and I was really impressed by it. And so now I've daunted her with the fact that every time I see a book I think she should write about, I'm going to get it for her. So
Oh, that's fantastic.
yeah, so for Christmas I bought her one, and we'll see. I actually bought her a trade paperback. I have a feeling it'll probably be under a doorstop somewhere by April. But so enough about all that. Let's get to you, because that's what we brought you down for.
Right.
Why don't we tell everybody out there again what you do, what Kellustration is. We'll give them the quick version so that if they heard it before, and then we can get into what you're working on right now.
Got it. Well, Kellustration, we're an art studio, but we pretty much we focus on art reproduction for reprinting comics. So when you want, if DC Comics, they want to reprint some old Superman comics, they don't have any film or any, because everything's digital these days. They don't have any of the original film in their archives, and all they have are just copies of the original comics. They go ahead, scan them in, or they hire us to go find copies of the books. We scan them in and then turn them into digital copies that are basically where we go in and we restore the line art to try to make it look as close to what it would have looked like on the original art page to whatever 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago.
And I don't remember if we asked this the first time you were here, and if refresh the audience, if so. Now, you're an artist. You're a fantastic artist, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You had done a piece for Lloyd here. Lloyd is a fan of Nosferatu, and you did an awesome...
Oh yeah, that was incredible. John gave that to me at the party that you threw,
Yeah.
and I was very surprised and kind of overwhelmed.
I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah.
And you did one for John here. We'll take a picture of it and put it up on. It wasn't a Christmas gift because John doesn't accept Christmas gifts. It was a pint year anniversary or over year anniversary gift of the what is he, the Tall Man?
Yes, the
out
Tall
of
Man.
Phantasm. But so you're a fantastic artist in your own right. So where did it become in your career? Where did the divergence of just plain out art change to restoring art for the most part?
Well, I started, for like the first 10 years, I was just a struggling artist. Well, try to keep it as short as possible. I had a full-time job, and I would come home. I had two little kids, well, at least one little kid at the time. And so I'd come home from work after your 9 to 12-hour day, spend a few hours with the family. Then when they go to bed, as Deb would attest to, just stay up all night drawing. and get 3 or 4 hours of sleep every night if I'm lucky. And that went on for, a good 6 or 7 years. I had started getting published, self-published, and I got some assignments through some smaller indie publishers.
Like?
Caliber was the biggest one. And that's when we decided, okay, I'm going to try to give this, I'm going to give it a shot and go. So I quit my job. I would say that would be like 97, 98, and I was getting little jobs here and there, but not a huge amount of work. I was completely anti-computer. I thought computers were the devil and they had no place in the art world. But I bought a computer and started learning how to use Photoshop. And luckily, it was around the time when digital colorists were really in demand. So I started doing digital coloring, hooked up with a few other well-established comic colorists, including Dean White. And at one point, my goodness, it was in 2003. I'm just taking coloring jobs anywhere I can, barely making ends meet. I mean, barely making ends meet.
Can I ask what a colorist was making per page at that point?
This colorist was making about $30 a page.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, if you're doing 1 or 2 pages a day, you're not making a lot of money. And of course, that was my goal was to try to put out the best quality I could, hoping that if I could keep putting out good quality, that's going to be bringing more and more work in. Which it's good in theory, but A, I wasn't that good yet, and B, for every step of improvement I made, everybody else was making the same step, and so everybody who was already ahead of me was still doing more and more. The only thing that was keeping me going was that I had low rates, and I was dependable.
Right.
But so I was helping out my buddy Dean White, and he hooked me up with his editor over at Marvel, who had just been put in charge of reviving the Marvel Masterworks series, which had been kind of defunct for a few years. And it was just, they were looking for someone who had a knowledge of coloring and a love of old comics, and I had both of those. And that was it. That was 2003, and we haven't stopped since then.
When you got onto the Masterworks series at Marvel, was it still with the same outside trade dress that they were using for all that time? It was that same border on the outside cover.
For the most part, it's still the same. It's still the same
okay.
dress that we've been using for. Since 1987,
kind of that black border, right?
It's got like the frontispiece on the cover is the same style, and then there's a different like art piece on in the center of the
right. Well, there's 2 versions for each book. Of course, the interior is exactly the same. It's just the dust jacket is different. One of them is like the
gray. And,
you're right. It's supposed to be silver. And the other one has marble with like a gold leaf, gold foil kind of effect on it.
Have you ever heard of the website Comic Book DB, Comic Book Database?
Oh yes, yeah. I go to that place all the time.
You're what's the word, man? You've got a lot on there.
Yeah.
At one point, I don't know if it was for the show or I was going to maybe put like a little blurb about maybe when I put the podcast out of the radio show you did last.
Yeah.
And list some of the stuff you worked on, and I was like, I'm done. I'm not even going to try because as opposed to someone that necessarily maybe has worked on one book for a bunch of years or something, you've worked on a ton of stuff.
And it's spread all over the place, right? Because of course, the Marvel. I'm credited on everything for Marvel Masterworks, which we're on volume 260 or 70 at this point, and I started working on, I want to say volume 30.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been 15 years.
They were releasing 40 books a year at one point.
Oh yeah, right. And it's not just the Marvel Masterworks.
Right.
We do all kinds of omnibus. Like the big thing we're working on right now is reviving the Marvel Conan work, and that's all going to be just in omnibus. And I think I could be 100% wrong, but I think if we were able to reprint all the Marvel Conan material, including the black and white magazines, which we're hoping to do, I want to say it's going to be like 35 omnibus, something like 20 or 30,000 pages of material.
See, now there's a question. If in fact you do get a chance to do the black and white books,
we have.
Okay.
We've been working on those.
And are they going to be reprinted in the same size, or are those going back to a comic book size?
The omnibus are going to be in the same omnibus size, which I think is just a hair bigger than comic size. So the comic books are a little bit bigger, but of course the magazines are going to be a little bit smaller.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What does that change when you do that, as far as the aspect ratio of everything you're looking at?
Oh, I mean, it's nothing noticeable. You know, the average reader isn't going to notice it.
Okay.
They're not going to notice any quality degree. And of course, we do everything at such a high resolution now. You know that it's literally like the difference between watching something on broadcast TV back in the 1960s compared to a 4K digital copy today. Because we do everything at a minimum of 600. I'm getting too technical.
Get technical. It's good.
600 DPI, which is the resolution, all the way up to 1200 DPI, sometimes 2400, which just basically means that if you brought it up on the computer, you could just zoom right in, and you could see just the finest amount of detail that's available.
And those, I don't know how much you know about the old black and white magazines they had at the time. The artwork was incredible.
Oh yeah.
It was totally different.
I don't
from what
have
you
any,
see.
but I've seen like Savage Sword and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
right?
Savage Sword of Conan, and what was it? The Conan Saga, which I think was a reprint anyway.
Yeah, I think Conan Saga was reprints, but of course they had Savage Sword of Conan. They had what was the Kung Fu? Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
It wasn't Master of Kung Fu. Deadly Hands of Kung Fu.
Deadly,
That was the magazine for
And
that one.
There was another one too.
There were a
an
few.
Incredible Hulk.
There was
that
a
they
Hulk one. There was a very short-lived Spider-Man.
which was big bucks back in the day for back issue stuff. I mean, it was hard to get.
Really?
Yeah, because the magazine stuff, the magazine readers were more adult, for one. And
Right, that's the audience they were after. Right?
Yeah, and the Conan stuff was definitely much more adult. I mean, I remember reading those as a kid, and because there were boobies in it, my mom wouldn't let me see it. You know? So,
which brings us to the Howard the Duck magazine. I don't know if you ever got to get a copy of that when you were a teenager. Yeah,
Dr. Bong.
Yeah.
All right, I got a question for Deb, actually. So, Deb, you live in a household, I'm assuming, with a guy who must get at least a comp copy of every one of these. How much time do you spend reading Marvel Masterworks?
None.
Okay, so my second question is, Mike, when can I move in? Like, do your kids like enjoy that stuff? Or?
It's the saddest thing where they.
Are these Masterworks like holding up furniture? Do you have like a broken leg on a table and like?
No, I have them just lay. I have a room for just everything, and I'm currently going through, and like once every couple years, I just kind of purge and just kind of give stuff away. In fact, at the Terrificon, I did that. Everything that I hadn't sold by the end of Sunday night, I just gave everything away.
And we should say too. I mean,
We didn't stay long enough.
the collection of different product that you have at your booth at any given point. You've got DC books, you've got Marvel books, you've got independent stuff,
Dark Horse, Dynamite, yep.
Archies.
Yes.
The old Archies.
That
I mean,
USS Stevens book.
USS
Well, yeah,
Stevens,
I think we all bought like.
that's a beautiful book. So I mean, that's Sam Glanzman. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's a weapon too.
It's a big book.
But it's a lot of stuff, and it's so broad based. You're you're covering every genre, every company that's coming to you. I mean, you're be overwhelmed.
Oh yeah. Oh, we're of course when I started, I mentioned this at the party. It was just me in my basement, literally just me in my basement, and now we're up to 25 artists that work for us, and it's still not enough. We're constantly just getting more and more artists coming in, and the past 2 years, things just exploded again. Where we were doing really well from like around 2000. I think things really got really heavy in around 2005, 2006. Things started dying down around 2011. But yeah, last year everything just exploded again, and now we can't keep up with it. It's fantastic. I know it's not going to last forever either, so we're just enjoying the ride because it's
that way.
Exactly. But because what it is, it's literally comes down to this, and Deb knows it drives me crazy because I have a hard time finding people with the same passion as I do. I look at what we do as we're the gatekeepers for all these old these artists, and I see people. The past 10 years, people have been reprinting stuff over and over again, and they'll generally they'll go out and buy an old comic, scan it, and then they'll publish it as a hardcover book. And it's just all of the original printing, all those errors are just are just there for everybody to see. When we go in there and we're trying to, which is the Indiana Jones, the archaeology reference came into it. Right.
As you're saying this, I'm waiting for you to say it belongs in the museum.
Oh, it does. I mean, some of the stuff it really.
I wanted to get a soundbite today. I had no time. I was going to play that while you were talking at some point today. It belongs in the museum.
I'll be honest with you. We should have like the theme song going on a loop. This whole episode. Should have thought of that earlier.
Right now, we're restoring a bunch of the old Golden Age Batman, like Dick Sprang kind of stuff.
Wow.
And we sit there, and of course, all we have to work from are the original printings from the 1940s. And printing was just primitive. It was horrible back then. Not only that, but it was cheap. They didn't care.
So you got colors that are outside the line.
Not just that, even worse, the actual line art is just printed. It gets so thick and bulky, in which I could spend 6 hours just explaining that whole process and what happens. But if you see if you're lucky enough to see a piece of original art of this work, it's just so much fine detail, so much brilliance, so much effort that went into it. And of course, when we read, if you're lucky enough to read an original copy of these books, you don't get to see any of that detail. It's all blown out or just kind of merged together, and it's a disservice to these artists who especially people who were back then making barely minimum wage, killing themselves, working 14 hours in these sweatshops, sitting there just trying to draw these comics for us idiot kids to enjoy.
How many times a day, Deb, does Mike turn to you with something he's really excited about like this, and you just... That's great, honey. That's great.
She's being very polite right now. But,
look at the shape of this original Dick Sprang page. I've got to go to the store for 7 hours.
Do you want anything from downstairs? I think is my question.
Yeah.
Do you ever? I mean, maybe we asked you this, but I guess I'm just going to forwardly just invite ourselves. Do you ever have people up there to check out this operation?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah. So let's just plan that right now.
You ready, Lou? You want to do some?
Lou, you want to do some filming? You want to check this out? Give everybody. We still have a little bit before the first commercial break, but give everybody the website.
No commercials.
Well, no PSAs and
Don't say
service
commercials.
announcements and all that.
We are a commercial-free
commercial
radio
free. Yeah,
show.
you're right. You're absolutely right about that. This is commercial free radio. But give everybody your website so that if they, as we're talking, they want to go and start checking some of this stuff out.
It's www. Do we need to say that anymore? It's KELLUSTRATION.com, Kellustration.com, or you can just go to my webpage, which is michaelkelleher.com, MACHAELLEHER, which has some of my work there.
You got it. So I wanted to ask, because we were talking about the Marvel Masterworks, 230 volumes at this point.
Like 260, 270.
260,
Yeah. Oh yeah, because we're talking about 300 coming up soon. So.
300. So what is the now? I'm assuming the idea behind Marvel Masterworks is broadly, really classic and popular stories from. What is the most obscure one that you've worked on? Like that's like okay, so I'm sure you have
Marvel obscure.
Well, you know what I mean. Like
I mean you're
yeah.
talking Marvel,
Marvel Masterworks.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming you have the original run of Spider-Man and you have the death of Gwen Stacy and all that stuff. But what is a masterwork that's like kind of like out of left field that most people wouldn't consider? Oh, I never would have thought they'd make a masterwork out of that.
Well, probably the Golden Age material that we worked on, like Young Allies. And we did a few of the early horror series. Did we do? I know we restored a few issues of things like Menace.
Wow.
The really obscure stuff. But I don't think we put out a full run of Menace. We did. And so now I'm splitting hairs here. But we have Marvel Masterworks, and then we have the Epic line, we have the Omnibus line, we have a lot of different things. And so in terms of the Masterworks, it's probably just like Young Allies, or we did the original first 10 Marvel Mystery Comics. From so the very first
Namor.
Marvel comics, exactly.
Okay.
First appearance like Human Torch, Namor, Angel, and a few other things.
What was that artist's name on Namor? I'm trying to
Bill
remember.
Everett.
Bill
Bill Everett. Yep.
Yeah, he was amazing. He really was good.
But now I say in terms of like the more modern thing. Well, there's hardly modern. It's the 1960s, but we did Not Brand Ek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did. We collected all those issues into one volume.
So
All
you
right,
do the
obscure.
omnibuses as well, then? Like,
We do anything we can get our hands
right.
on. Yeah.
Do you basically get all the Marvel omnibuses they work on, or just certain ones?
No, comp copies from Marvel are
No.
sporadic.
I mean, do you basically work on every one?
Oh,
If they have an omnibus coming out. Do you get it?
No, certainly not everything. We get the majority
Yeah.
of the work, but no, we couldn't possibly handle. Every year we work to handle more and more work. But when we started 15 years ago, there was a small, 3 or 4 separate teams that would work on all this stuff, and a couple of them have gone on to bigger and better things.
Did you by any chance work on the Walt Simonson Thor omnibus by any chance?
No.
Oh. Lou and me were at a show, and he passed up buying it for like $60, and it went out of print. It's like $500 now. And
the out of print ones. Right.
It's on eBay for. They did a second printing of it. I got it, but I always just bring it up with Lou because look at his face right now. He's still irritated. Him and Haught over $60.
Do you find that surprising now? It's like these collected volumes, the ones that go out of print, are suddenly now as hard to get and are valuable, just like the single issue comics.
In some cases I'm surprised, and in some cases I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah,
like with like the Thor Simonson Thor. That makes me happy to hear that that's sold out, because that's just great work. That's just wonderful material. I'm glad it's sold out. I'm not happy that. People had to spend huge amounts of money, and then they reprinted it, and now someone can get it for $7,500, right, whatever it is. But then there are things that just perplex me, where I'm not going to name anything specifically because I don't want to offend anybody. But there are volumes that we've worked on, and the book will come out, and it's like 1,000 pages, so the cover price is about $125, and I'm looking at it, it's like you could buy every comic that's in here for probably like $50. Because they're not valuable comics. Now, granted, I like to think that we give a little bit of value to it because we've improved the artwork. We have better quality in there. But a lot of this stuff, like from the 80s and 90s, where we already had, even the original printings were good quality. I just don't understand. But that's the mentality of collectors these days. They like the collected editions, which is fantastic. I love it. But as a guy who still loves the floppies, the comics. I would always rather just buy the floppies.
The floppies.
I'm with him. I buy those too. So.
Yeah.
I tend to buy collected editions just because if it's something I can't get my hands on very easily.
Yeah.
Or I'll have the case where I'll go and look for books out of quarter bins, which I'm fine with just reader copies most of the time, and I can't find 3 issues. And I spend a year looking for 3 issues. I'm just done at that point.
Well, see, that was, to me, that was the fun of collecting comics.
Well, of course,
though.
you're Indiana Jones. You want to dig.
Well, and I'm more like for books that never got finished. So now they've either completed them or they've collected everything together. Say, Puma Blues, perfect example.
Yeah.
So you had one issue that was never completed, I guess, or ever published.
Right.
So they finally put all the issues together, plus any errata that they had. What a beautiful collection!
That was a great.
Yeah.
That was a great.
And people have been waiting for that last issue for 30 years, and it finally gets published, and it's a beautiful collection of stuff.
And that's the thing I like about a lot of these because a lot of the collections they will add, actually, even like with the Marvel Masterworks, we don't certainly we're not going to add new material, but we'll throw in little artifacts like pieces of original artwork, little notes that the artists were passing to each other.
That stuff's cool.
That's the kind of stuff I enjoy.
It's like the special features on a DVD.
That's right.
Exactly.
It's like the commentary almost.
Gotta have something like that.
Yeah. All right, so we're at the halfway point of the hour. We're here with Michael and Deb Kelleher, our wonderful guest tonight. This is Pint of Comics on WESU Middletown, WESU FM 88.1, all the way to the left of the dial. We're going to do a couple of public service announcements, not commercials, because we're commercial free. And we'll be back, and we're going to dig into some more stuff with these folks. So we'll be back in, as Chuck Woolery says, 2 and 2.
Credit card debt, mortgage debt, loan debt. It's overwhelming. Sleep debt is another serious form of personal debt, and it grows when you don't sleep well or long enough. Insufficient sleep can lead to poor health and reduced quality of life. Fortunately, sleep debt is easy to pay off by taking a few simple steps. For information that truck drivers and companies can use to prevent sleep debt, visit www.healthysleepfortruckers.org. A message from CDC.
This is Jerry Ordway, the guy who killed Superman. Whatever you do, don't listen to Pint of Comics.
That's got spam in it!
All right, we are back. We
I
took a
go
quick
up to
one.
the guy.
Oh,
and
Mike.
I say, how much?
You're on.
We're back on.
We're back on
Yeah,
already?
I did.
That's got spam in it!
You know what it is nothing went wrong. The screen blanked out on me, and I played a little. What do we got here?
Are there any women here today? Hipsters!
Okay, that's
And I
right
couldn't get
into
back to a PSA fast enough. And I said, you know what? We don't have to play it super a lot. We got you here, so we want to talk to you. All right. So that was the quickest ever break there. I don't know what happened. The screen bopped up. John,
Did you hit something?
No, it just went down. I don't know. I don't understand computers perfectly.
Wow. Okay. I know when we were talking on the last show, which I can't remember when it was, and I think we have that saved somewhere on
Oh, it's a podcast.
It is okay. So
it is.
So if anyone wants to listen to that,
yeah, it's. I'll put it back out again tonight. I don't
I
remember the
forget
title of it, but
yeah, something. But anyway, we were going into the in-depth difficulties you have with the inks.
Mm-hmm.
And the colors when it comes to reproducing these comics, because the print quality of the paper was different, and then they in some cases, particularly the newspapers that would print the stuff, they were just grabbing whatever colors they had on the shelf at any time
Right.
to make a blue or make
Yeah.
purple or
Instead of using cyan, they would use a deep blue
Yeah.
or no, instead of magenta, which isn't technically red.
Right.
They would use a red ink, which adds yellow to everything. Yeah, it just screws up the palette.
that's your four colors there.
Exactly. Yes.
what were they again?
CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black.
And what makes those the four colors?
Because when you combine those in the right ratios, you can duplicate even though still limited, a very large palette of colors.
Wow.
Right, and of course you have everyone has to be working from a set baseline, and of course CMYK became that baseline.
Wow. I've always known the four color. And I know you explained it last time too. And I know by the time we leave here tonight in a half an hour, I'm not going to remember that. But CMYK, I'm gonna put it back there.
Yeah.
Do you have that kind of problem with the old comics as well?
Oh, it's exclusively. That's what causes so many problems.
Okay.
I would say up until the 1960s,
Okay.
it was a consistent problem.
Well, I didn't know where the printing presses that they were using at any given point for the earlier stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know there was a couple of them here in Connecticut. Yeah, Connecticut actually.
Yeah.
Eastern Press.
Right. In fact, the very first press that comic books were, if I think I have this right, the printing press was taken from the newspaper in Springfield, and then brought down to Connecticut, and that's the very first comics were printed on. The very first color comics were printed on that press from Springfield.
Oh.
Yeah.
Springfield Press.
Springfield Art Mafia.
Yeah.
News right there. The OG right there.
Our roots run deep. Yes.
Now I got a question for you, Mike, because this is actually a question from my wife, Lindsay, who listens every week, and we'll send questions in. She had asked me this the other day. Now you do up at the Bing Arts Center. I don't know when. I can't remember if it's in the springtime, but you have like a night where it's kind of like an art night thing.
Oh, we did. We tried that a couple times, and it just didn't work out.
Okay.
We didn't have enough people.
You just broke her heart. She
showing
was
up.
like,
Oh.
"Can you ask?" My wife, when we first started dating many years ago, she was into art, and she's pretty good. And just kind of one of those things that fell by the wayside. And she's been getting back into it again.
Well-
and she's like, "Does Mike teach classes or anything?" And I said, "I know he does something, but I'm going to ask."
Well, we are going to continue in a much smaller, intimate kind of setting at my house, and so when we start that, I'll let you know.
Let me know.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, I wasn't sure if you had like if it was a class you did or if it was just like an art night.
Well, it was. Of course, you go to these conventions, everyone talks about. It's like, oh, we're artists, but we don't get to really do anything. And they have the drink and draws and
Right.
things like that. But people, they don't want to really spend. They don't want to. They can't afford the $10-20 a week to go do stuff like that. So I thought, I would once a month. I would. We rented out. Well, first we rented out a room at the same church of that the BingCon is being held in every year, and we just invited people to come over. And like everything, it starts off big and it slowly starts tapering off, and then you get very few people showing up. And then we tried that 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we tried it again last year at the Bing, and same thing. Like the first couple, it was going really well, and then then the last one we had like 4 or 5 people showed up, and of course it's still costing money out of my pocket to do this.
Right.
So it's like, nah. Well, we're just it was always the same faithful people that showed up. So we're right now we're just trying to figure out a way to just do it out of our house, and we'll just invite a small group of people to come over, and it's a combination of just art lessons and just sitting down drawing and just having a good time with good people.
Now, were you? you were self-taught, or did you take classes?
100% self-taught.
Really?
Yeah.
So
No,
you've
no
never
pair college for you?
No.
Wow.
Nothing like that.
I say this again because I think probably maybe people who might look at your work, obviously, because your work is restoration.
Yeah.
They got to know what a good artist you are too.
Oh, thank you.
You did that Nosferatu piece for Lloyd, and you did the Phantasm piece, and I've seen other things you've done, and you're up there, man.
Oh, thanks.
I'm not just saying that. It's a classic style too. It's kind of hard to the Nosferatu piece. You did that whole thing in the background with the shadow.
Yeah.
The shadow, it's like kind of a forward-facing bust of Nosferatu, and then in the back the shadow with the teeth and the mouth open.
Right. Well, my biggest influences are people, of course, like Bernie Wrightson, but his influences are like the EC crowd, EC
Right.
Comics, and I love
Graham Ingalls and
Jack Davis
Jack
is
Davis.
my all-time favorite. And certainly I would never compare myself to him, but that's a kind of work I like to think I emulate. That kind of style.
And those that don't know Jack Davis from comics would know him from many movie posters.
Oh, sure.
Done.
Yeah.
He's the epitome of
Mad Magazine.
One of
Yeah.
the longtime artists.
So
in that.
recently, Lloyd and I had done an episode of the podcast where we had asked a bunch of people a bunch of questions. Lloyd came up with a list of questions he had about comic books, and you did one. And it was.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, you did.
I didn't know what you were talking about for a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you did one, and you answered. I think it was who's your favorite artist, and you put Jack Davis.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, John wasn't there that night, and I was like, "Geez, this is." I even said it. I said, "This is where we need John," because I had to. As we're talking, I looked it up earlier in the week. And I had forgotten, and I'm looking up as we're talking. I'm going,
The guy did-
Mad Magazine. He's Mad Magazine. Because he was one of the
Amazing
founders
caricature
or original artists of Mad Magazine.
Almost like once a month, he'd be the artist, the cover artist for TV Guide.
Right.
When we were growing up.
Right,
Yeah,
really.
he was just everywhere
Like,
back then.
just
Yeah.
look at any movie poster from the 70s through the early 80s.
Yeah, almost any comedy.
Any
Yeah.
comedy, yeah.
Right.
Any Reitman comedy, any Meatballs. I think he did Meatballs. He did.
I couldn't name any of them at this
God,
point,
I'm
but
trying
yeah.
to remember them because they're so iconic.
Right.
You look at the posters, you're like, oh yeah, it's great art. It's goofy, it's funny, and then you can recognize every person. He did so many Bill Murray caricatures.
That's awesome. So when you're working on some of these things that you're doing, give me a couple artists in particular who's like when you're working on the restorations that you have to continuously stop yourself from marveling over the art itself. Like I'm sure you've worked on a million great artists, but are there certain ones that you find yourself slacking on actually getting stuff done because you're looking at it and going,
Well,
how do they do this?
I don't have that opportunity to slack off at any time.
I
But yeah, I mean
slightly slacking.
there are certainly some like recently with Barry Windsor Smith Conan, we just restored all of his. We're just sitting there looking at all of his work. We recently did some Steve Ditko, including some Ditko was obviously a very unique style. And some of you can tell when he was just rushing through and getting stuff done. But then when he was sitting down and actually just taking his time on some really wonderful detailed work, especially on some of the old the monster comics. There's some really, really great stuff. And you sit there and just marvel at the amount of detail that he put, even when he was inking himself.
Right.
Just working on working for. The Jack Kirby stuff is always fun. In the past 4 or 5 years, we redid all of the Miracle Man
Really?
Work, and of course, that's Rick Veitch, guy who did Fables.
Bill Willingham?
No, Buckingham.
Oh,
Mark Buckingham, those, and going through and trying to restore every single piece of line. Granted, we had original art to work from for most of that stuff, so that was great. But then occasionally, when you didn't have the original art, you got to sit there and, in some cases, like trace over exactly the lines that they were going through.
And I know I've gotten into this with you before, probably off the air a couple times. I know there were overlays in some of the artwork on the pages, which I don't. Some of it might go missing from some of the original art. Mm-hmm. How do you end up reproducing stuff like that? Do you have to go off of some kind of copy of the actual comic book?
Yeah, that's exactly all we have.
Yeah.
When all we have is the printed comic to go by, that's what we have to use. And so we just did some Jack Kirby material that had it's called a color hold. Basically, you look at a printed comic and you look at something. Obviously, the guy drew it in black and white, but now it's printed in blue or red or whatever. We call that a color hold. So it's not the black line anymore. And there were what we call the zipatone. You know those little dots, the little dots that are in there, but they were intentionally put there by the artist, and so we want to leave it like that. And what I have to do is sit down and figure out how to exactly as possible duplicate that pattern of dots, which sometimes is very simple because it's just a very mechanical set of dots. But then other times it's like stippled. And you have to sit there and try to figure out a way to duplicate this and hope that it doesn't come down to you sitting down and literally drawing thousands of dots by hand, which sometimes it comes down to that.
Wow. And I know in the case of some of the reproductions, if some of the artists or the creators are still alive, sometimes you get a few complaints that it's not exactly the way it looked, or the completists, like the hardcore fans that go nuts over that kind of stuff.
Right,
too,
and
so.
it's usually more with color. In fact, I'm not sure that I ever remember hearing anyone complain about the line art quality. That's it's certainly, we have had a couple, usually by fans, but I don't remember any artists ever say anything. But
were they on the internet by any chance?
Of course, yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. I wasn't sure if anybody on the internet had ever disparaged your work. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh no, and people, I've had people do it in person too. They're usually
class acts.
They're usually relatively polite about it, but still. But yeah, we've had some people complain about the colors, including famously Barry Windsor Smith.
Yeah.
He's not happy with the and I have to say that to a certain extent I agree with him.
Yeah.
Where he says that and without getting into too much detail, Smith was very inventive in the way he colored comics. He colored comics differently than anybody else. Again, it would take me hours to explain the difference, but he put a lot of time, effort into it. And to try to put it simply, when you're printing something, and when the colorist is coloring something, so the way it would work is the artist would draw the page, they would photocopy it and hand a copy of the photocopy of the artwork to the colorist. The colorist would sit down with watercolors and color it. And he or she would color it using a limited palette of 64 colors. And when they're working with their watercolor dyes, of course that's consistent. You buy it from the store, it's always going to be the same color. So they know that this light blue is always going to look light blue. But of course, when it prints, because the print levels, it was done so cheaply and so ineffectively back then. The blue is always going to print either too dark or too light. The magenta is always going to be too dark or too light. The yellow, black, everything. Nothing is going to print correctly, and it's not going to print. It's not going to print the same from book to book that comes off that printing press because the ink levels start to go down and then they fill it back up, and now it's gone from too low to too high. And so my copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 190 that I bought at the newsstand is going to look different from the guy down the street who bought the copy at the newsstand.
I can only imagine how it was if you're doing some of the 80s stuff when they started to change some of the printing processes and the coloring process to that Baxter style paper.
Yeah.
How much it's improved from then when it was a big experiment. Everyone was loving the brightness of the colors, but it never really printed the right way.
Well, at that point, of course, the colors are printing just too vibrant.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
they're not expecting it, which goes back to what Smith's complaint was. He said, I picked this purple to go in my comic because I knew it wasn't going to print the way that it should have printed. So he said, I'm playing the odds, and I know that usually this purple is going to print way too light. So I chose a color that was way too light. Now here we are 40 years later, and we're printing with exact technology. So I know that when I say, okay, I want 50% cyan on the paper, it's going to be 50% cyan.
CMYK.
Exactly. You got it. And so it does. And in a lot of cases, these colors can look garish, especially with someone like, if you're printing the 1960s Fantastic Four, where it was just, okay, it's just a blue costume, and then the background was all purple for the for the city background. that's fine. There's not a lot of colors playing against each other. What Barry Windsor Smith was trying to do was bringing in almost like a painterly quality to comics at the time. So he had this, using the limited palette, he figured out a way to use the printing process to his advantage. And it was a huge amount of work, and it looked gorgeous. But again, now you take what he created out of necessity from garbage and put it into today's. I'll use the word perfection, but obviously it's not. It's never perfect. But the almost perfect circumstances, and the colors just don't work sometimes. But you also have to look at it through our eyes. It's like we can't go back to every single artist.
Right.
That have worked on these.
There's a lot of variables.
Right. That's exactly right. And again, 90% of the time it doesn't matter because they didn't put the kind of effort that Smith put into it. Right. So when Smith is concerned about the colors, we get it. We understand it, and we do what we can when we can.
I want to check to see if Deb's asleep. No, Deb's still there. She's like, this is the conversation. He was talking about this last night.
Exactly. Yeah. This is Deb's life.
I'm sure we've lost a few
conversation.
listeners too. But it's like this is the stuff that fascinates me. It's
honestly, this is one of the few times that if you're listening to a show called Pint of Comics, that you're actually going, they're talking about comics.
We're not just talking about comics. We're talking about comic production,
the production
and
of comics,
and the actual stuff that goes into it. It's just amazing.
What
processes.
would you say? Now we kind of covered, at least to that point, but was there any of the books that you've worked on restored? And I don't even want to say like something like the Little Nemo, that was so old. But was there something in particular, or one artist in particular, that really busted them off on you in terms of it was just, and not that it was poor quality, just meaning maybe it was just difficult in their art style or how to reconstruct that.
Anything inked by Vince Colletta.
Okay, and what's the reasoning for that?
He used I think what it comes down to is he used a very thin pen. And
so you can't even see the lines. It's so
in cases where we don't have any film or original art, because basically what they would have to do, the lines were so thin, and I don't want it to sound like I don't like Vince Colletta as an inker.
No.
And he's been dead for a long time, so it doesn't matter. I'm not hurting anyone's feelings.
Trust me, there are Vince Colletta fans out there.
You
gotta be nice to him.
Exactly.
I do want to throw this out there without mentioning names. The last time Mike was on here, he said something. He told me the story. He said something about somebody in the comic industry that was not disparaging, but within a couple days he got an email from corporate, saying not to talk about, and it wasn't directed to him. It was a blanket email, but he's like,
it seemed a little too coincidental, right?
Corporate's listening to our show.
Well, yeah, that's exactly the point. That you guys might have a bigger audience than you think.
The blank van is outside right now.
we never know with this show.
So Vince Colletta just.
Yeah, it was just right. It was really thin lines. So what they would have to do is they would have to really darken up the line so that they would print on there. So everything, all the thin lines bulk together. And of course, if you're drawing, I'm drawing in the air right now. If you draw a bunch of thin lines right next to each other and you thicken them all up, it becomes one big thick line.
Right.
And so in print, back in the 60s, his stuff looked horrible. And on top of it, we ran into a lot of issues where, for whatever reason, they didn't erase all the pencil lines. And so those ended up showing up.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so it just really bulked up the lines, and you can't tell that they were pencil lines because everything is all just black ink now, right. And so it just looked horrible. So yeah, working on Vince Colletta's work is usually a challenge.
And just for anyone listening, who would Vince usually work with?
1960s. So a lot of Kirby.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know this, but
okay.
All right. I just figured that. Let the listeners hear it.
I want to ask Deb a question actually, because she's been here. She's been awesome. We talked about the fact that you actually have been at shows. You make bookmarks. And
I want to interrupt her. I was like, she's the vice president of Callistration, and she does work with me.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, she doesn't like it, but she does it.
She's the vice president, and she still falls asleep when you're telling stories.
Oh yeah.
But I did want to ask.
Oh God, they're talking CMYK again.
Do you CMYK? Do you actually for your bookmarks and for any of that type of stuff you do Do you have like an online presence or a store, or is it
I'm
just...
trying to work on it, but I'm less technical on the online stuff than I think that you were complaining that you were earlier.
Oh, okay. All
Well,
right.
plus we set up a website for her, debsbookmarks.com,
Yeah.
but at the convention she pretty much sells out before, so she never has any merchandise to put up
Okay.
on
Yeah.
the website.
I bought the it's great. You did a Green Lantern one.
I did a bunch of them, but they're all different. So
Yeah, the one I have has the little logo, and it's
do
like a
this
little
one.
what would you call that? Almost like it's the emblem, but it's like a charm almost.
it is.
Fantastic.
Thank
It
you.
really is. So I want Deb's bookmarks, but maybe if you go there, you might not be able to get anything right now. But if you go to one of the
I'm
Big Con
working
shows,
on it.
she's working on it. So check
Yeah.
it out and look and maybe get an order in there.
Yeah, and she'll have a list of any shows that she's going to be appearing at. So
Yeah.
How long have you been doing the bookmarks?
A little over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
great.
a passion of mine.
Oh yeah.
I love bookmarks. I like individualization, and each time, like if I reread the same book, we both get something different out of it. It's just how people interpret what they're reading and what they get out of it.
All right, I got to ask. 'cause
I almost want to have one with a silver ball from
Oh, fantastic. Custom. So how many books a year would you say you read? How many books? Are you one of these readers that do you read like 3 books a week or something? Or
I would if I could, but
Okay.
I have a regular full-time job. I work with him. I'm basically the artist wrangler.
Okay.
I handle all the work, send it out to people, and harass them. I also work with the bookkeeper and stuff like that.
This is 100% true. We had to have an intervention with Debbie because she was just not sleeping. She would go to work, come home, take care of anything that needed to be done at home, and then stay up all night reading. And then, like after 3 or 4 days, I'm like, Deb, it looks like you haven't slept. She's like, no, fine. And then she would just pick up a book, and she would read like
I was rereading Dragon Riders of Pern again.
Yeah.
It's exactly.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah, she would read like a novel in 2 days, and she would just so yeah, probably like around 4 or 5 years ago, we had to have a talk with her and say, no, you need to stop this.
It's like
Yeah.
that thick of a book is a snack.
Take away her library card. Can't
But
have it.
now she's
They're free.
she's discovered Audible, so we have that. But we must have. How many novels and paperbacks do we have in the house? It's got to be thousands,
I
right?
cut it down. I think I'm down to 3,000.
3,000.
I gave
Yeah.
I gave away.
3K.
I'm about 5 feet tall. I gave away 3 sets of boxes, my height, full of books.
Yeah,
You don't have a
2 years
basement, do you?
we do. It's full of
Yeah.
books.
I
No,
was
no,
gonna say-
those, I don't have any down there.
Oh, they're all in our bedroom now.
I'm
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I'm just worried about the house collapsing into the basement. So I, jack it up.
No, we keep a lot of the comic books down there.
No.
No. Well, oh no, we do.
Yeah.
I was going to correct you, but you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a dehumidifier in the situation.
I know,
correct?
right?
Yes.
course.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I know
Yeah.
that you're.
We're all we're all sweating over here. It's like, what? No, not the basement.
in the basement. Playoffs.
There's also a refrigerator down there, so you can.
Is
easily
it
get
full
to a
of
beverage.
books though? I mean, like
It might
you
as
open
well
the
be.
fridge and there's books in there.
No, you gotta have something to drink while you're reading. So
It's the Hellboy
okay.
beer or the Hellboy Fireball.
Is your local library filled with your collection?
no, I give them away to people.
Just people.
Yeah, and then the whole thing is you can't throw it away or sell it. You have to give it away.
I feel the same way about books, so yeah, that's one of my outlets is the library.
Do you have one of those give a book, take a book thing on your front lawn?
No, I'm
No.
not encouraging people to come by my house like that.
There was actually a website a few years ago, and I tried it and it didn't work. But where you're supposed to log into it and then go leave a book somewhere, and then log where you left it. And then someone's supposed to like Laundromat on 5 Smith Road, Middletown, Connecticut, left this book there. And then someone
Geocaching for
it's
books?
like geocaching for books. And I tried it, and like I someone took my book, but no one logged it. I'm like, what the hell? I even put inside the book. I'm like, just you can have this book. It's free. It was okay, but please log it in. No log. I tried it twice. I left it in 2. I left it when we were living in an apartment. I left it like sitting on the floor in like the common area. Someone took it. No one logged it. Yeah.
Introverts, they don't want to go get on in
Get
any
on the
interaction with
computer.
people.
Yeah.
That's a free book.
They were probably online complaining about Kelly Kellestration's work on Vince Coletta or something. Introverts.
So, again, the last time you were on, we talked about how you went through all the Marvel archives and and had to do that.
Oh, the actual physical location of the archives.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have to do any of that anymore?
No, we haven't. I haven't been there since 2011, I think it was, maybe 2010, 2011, and my editor, I think, has been there twice.
Where was that again? Like Columbus, Ohio?
It's in St. Louis now.
St. Louis, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sparta.
Was it?
It was in Sparta. Well,
Okay.
I shouldn't say originally in Sparta, but when we first went there, it was in Sparta, Illinois. And we famous for filming in the heat of the night and the pinball machine wars, where apparently people got murdered for pinball machines.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is Sparta!
But that's where the original, what was the name? The original comic, almost all the comic books that were printed in the 70s and 80s. What was the name of the
distribution center that was there, too.
yeah, but they did everything there. They did the
Sparta, yeah.
printing and World Color.
Yeah.
That was it, World Color.
Wow.
Yep.
Just look at the indicia in any comic book.
Yeah, and it'll say,
like
it'll mention
70
World Color in there. Right.
When you went, did you have like the khaki pants and like a tan shirt and the fedora? Did you?
I'm sure I told this story last time, but I'll tell it again. When I got the call to go to the secret location, I was all excited. And I pictured getting picked up in a limousine, being driven to this bunker, and it would be like this latch would come up out of the ground, and we'd go down in an elevator 30 or 40 stories, and the doors would open up, and there would be this like marble hallway with pillars of the Hulk and Thor holding up the ceiling, and everything would be just shining. There'd be like armed guards marching back and forth, and of course when we got there, it was literally a dilapidated boat storage house.
That's
You
crazy.
really needed a whip, didn't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I guess. That's
There were groundhogs everywhere.
I actually, dude, when you got there, was there already a guy there like Renee Belloc? Like is there like a Belloc to you? Like he's your French version who's one step ahead of you at all. Mr. Keller.
Yeah, not that trip, but I certainly won't get into it on. Maybe
Wait. There actually is.
I'll kind of give you the story in private. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Good.
Michael Kelleher, part 3.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yeah, we're getting to the end, so that's a perfect way to set that up.
I know, right?
Oh man. So Mike, one more time, why don't you give everybody, including Deb's bookmarks, give them all of the websites that they can find anything that you work on or attach to.
Okay. Of course, Deb's bookmarks, DEBS. Bookmarks. It is plural. It's bookmarks, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. .com, where she will at very least have a list of any places that she's going to be selling her bookmarks, and she does sell out very quickly. So come and take a look. At the very least, it's all fun, gorgeous stuff.
It's awesome
and
quality.
I hope everyone will agree. Deb's fun to talk to anyway, so just go over and just say hello. My website's Kellustration, KELLUSTRATION. You can look at a little bit of the work that we do. You can order our Little Nemo restored prints, just a labor of love for me. And of course, if you're looking to hire me,
You
as
should probably say Little Nemo in Slumberland.
Little Nemo in Slumberland. That's right. Yeah, because we haven't touched the ones after that. And then of course, if you're looking to hire an artist, for anything, I do storyboards, I do comic book coloring, I do anything you can think of. That's Michael Kelleher, MICHAEL KELL
EHER.
EHER.
He knows everything about comic books, but his last name is a mystery to him. It's Michael Kelleher. Well, this has been Pint of Comics. This is the end of 2018. I almost said 13.
First full year.
First full year of the show.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mike, for coming on. You've said
thanks for coming
when
on.
I saw you at BinCon, you said some really kind stuff about our show, and
I'm a big fan of the show.
that kills me when people say that, because I'm like, I think that we recorded it for.
I listened to you and Lloyd last week.
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
We are leaving!